"Stay out of my business, Mom." That's what he said. Not in anger, not in heat, just like I was background noise. I had just handed him the papers, the last of the company shares. My name still wet on the page. He didn't look up, just tapped his pen twice and waved me toward the door. Like I was a guest, like I hadn't built that business from garage dust and grief. That's fine. He can talk now. I'll build something he can't inherit. The coffee always tasted better at 5 a.m. before the machines turned on, before the floor filled with voices. I'd sit in my corner office, window cracked just enough to hear the trucks roll in. Ledger open, pen steady, steam rising in the quiet like prayer. That building had its own heartbeat. You could feel it in the pipes, in the metal rails, along the shipping dock. We didn't build it for profit. We built it to survive. My husband and I started with 2 machines and a dream nobody clapped for. A rusted drill press, a used van with one headlight out. We built shelves out of scrap wood and hope. I worked double shifts, took naps in the stockroom when the pregnancy kicked too hard, filed invoices by hand, drove home with oil on my palms and lullabies in my throat. We named the business after our son, first name in bold, ours faded in the fine print. He used to crawl under my desk while I took sales calls, would hand me plastic hammers like he was helping. The warehouse guys built him a workbench made from crates and duct tape, and I thought, if I just worked harder, he'd never have to. We never went to Disneyland, but we had pancakes on inventory days, and slow dances in the office when the lights flickered out during storms. My husband would hold me close between the shelves and whisper, "Just us, babe. That's all we ever needed." Then he got sick, quickly, quietly. Cancer doesn't ask for permission, it just moves in, steals socks, hides the remote, turns voices into whispers. He left the company to me, and I ran it with both hands shaking. I turned loss into logistics, grief into grit. Every meeting became a mask I wore for his sake, for our son's future. And it worked. Eventually, we expanded, hired more hands, bought that second building across the lot, started getting featured in trade magazines. Legacy family business, they called us. But legacy has weight, and I never realized how heavy until I saw my son start standing differently, like his name alone was enough to hold up the roof. He stopped coming in early, stopped asking questions, started carrying business cards with titles I didn't approve. VP, then CEO in waiting, then just CEO. He took the chair his father once sat in, but never asked how cold it felt in winter, never knew the bills we hid behind vendor payments to keep the lights on. I kept showing up, kept wearing the same blazer I wore the day we opened, the one with his baby spit on the sleeve, never fully washed out. He never noticed. One day, he replaced the break room chairs, said they were too old school. I ran my hand along the worn armrest before it was hauled away. The chair I breastfed him in after long shifts. Gone. The staff changed too. Young, fast-talking. No one called me ma'am anymore. Just her. She's still on the board. She helped start it, I think. I heard she comes in early, like always. I became the painting no one dusts, respected from a distance, until I was simply distant. But I kept showing up, not for respect, not even for power, for memory, for meaning. I watched my son walk the floor with perfect posture and no patience. Watched him interrupt the old machinist who trained him at 13. Watched him click his tongue when the payroll sheet wasn't sorted by profit margin. And I bit my tongue. Every single time. Because I thought maybe he was just trying too hard, trying to fill a shadow that stretched decades long. I stayed quiet, polished plaques, replaced the bulb in the hallway light myself. Even brought him lunch. Turkey and mustard. No mayo. He hated mayo. He left it on his desk for 3 days, then tossed it in the trash, unopened. I was never truly lonely, just quietly replaced. But I stayed, because I believed in what we built, because I believed, maybe foolishly, that he still believed in me, until the morning he said it. The words still echo louder than the machines ever did. "Stay out of my business, Mom." Like I was the help. Like I hadn't bled into those floorboards. Like I hadn't fed him with those calloused hands. He said it without anger, without shame, just vacancy. And that was the moment the coffee stopped tasting right. The moment I realized I didn't lose him to money. I lost him to forgetting, to comfort, to a name he never earned, only inherited. But I am not the echo. I am the voice that built this place. And when a voice gets quiet, it's not because it's broken. It's because it's waiting. Waiting to be heard. One last time. It came in a plain manila envelope. No note, no warning, just slipped beneath my office door like it didn't matter. I thought it was a vendor report. Something routine. I opened it out of habit. The kind you keep after years of checking everything twice. Inside was a printed pitch deck, 12 glossy pages, bold font, sharp branding. Vision 2030, repositioning our brand for modern leadership. His name on the header, not mine, not ours. The cover showed the company logo, but altered. My name, gone. No script, no slogan, no legacy, just the company name in minimalist font, and his signature in the corner. I flipped through the slides slowly, hands steady, heart, not so much. Page 4. Current brand equity, perceived outdatedness. Subpoint, founder legacy no longer aligns with investor expectations. I reread that line 5 times, each word louder than the last, each one scraping something raw inside me. Page 6. Phase 1. Remove founder-associated materials. Office portraits, letterhead and business cards, lobby plaques, website bios. He didn't say mother, he said founder. Like I was a mistake they were gently correcting. I closed the folder, sat back in the chair he hadn't yet replaced, ran my fingers along the edge of the desk, the same one I had built with my husband, the same one my son used as a fort when he was 5. I thought I was breathing, but my chest didn't rise. The room was silent, but everything inside me was screaming. I stood up slowly, walked to the filing cabinet I kept locked out of habit. 3rd drawer, back folder, old payroll slips, family photos, and one folded piece of lined paper. The hand-drawn logo, crayon sketch, misspelled company name with a backwards E. He made it when he was 7. We had pinned it to the office corkboard for years. The real logo came later. But that one, the crayon one, was the first real vision. I held it in my hand, trembling. On the bottom corner, scribbled in red marker, "Me and Mommy's business." I stared at those words until my eyes blurred, until the shape of the paper didn't feel like paper anymore. It felt like betrayal. Not loud, not dramatic, just cold. I placed the crayon logo on the desk beside the pitch folder. 2 futures, side by side, one built in love, the other in erasure. He hadn't said a word to me about any of this. No call, no meeting, no moment of honesty, just a quiet push out the side door, like I wouldn't notice, like I would accept it. I reached for the landline, paused, set it down. What was there to say? What words would fix this kind of forgetting? I turned to the window. Same one I'd looked out of for 30 years. The shipping trucks moved like clockwork. Tony from maintenance waved without looking. The world kept spinning, but something in me had stopped. Stopped hoping, stopped excusing, stopped pretending he was still the boy under my desk with plastic tools. He had built his own world now, and he wanted to edit me out of it. So I let the silence do what words couldn't. I took the pitch folder, slipped it back into the envelope, taped it shut. I didn't send it back. I didn't confront him. I placed it neatly in my bottom drawer, filed it between old contracts and employee letters. Then I locked it, turned off the lights, and sat alone in the dark, letting the truth settle into the cracks of me. He hadn't just changed the logo. He had rewritten the story, one where I was just a footnote, if even that. I stayed there until the sun started to fade. The hum of the vending machine the only sound in the building. Then I opened my purse, slipped in the crayon logo, carefully, that one, He didn't get to erase. The first time he left me off an email, I told myself it was an accident. Too many people on the thread. Too many things in his head. I even typed a reply, then deleted it. Didn't want to seem petty. The next time, it was a board meeting. I showed up, sat in my usual chair. Someone else's nameplate was there. Reassigned, he said with a smile that didn't quite meet his eyes. It's just for this quarter, Mom. Quarter turned to year. He gave the seat to a marketing guy who wore sneakers with suits and called me Miss. Just Miss. No name, like he didn't want to risk getting it wrong. I excused it again, told myself I was old-fashioned, that maybe it was time I stepped back. But stepping back feels different when you're pushed. At the holiday luncheon, he stood at the podium and gave a speech, thanked the team, the visionaries, even the janitor by name. Not one word about me, not even when the staff clapped in my direction. He just smiled tighter and moved on. I ate half my meal in silence. The other half I boxed up and gave to Linda in HR. She always remembered my name. Once I brought in an old framed photo, me and his father, covered in grease, laughing behind the first lathe. I hung it near the break room. Next day, it was gone. No one mentioned it. But someone hung up a sleek canvas with buzzwords in metallic font. Disrupt, scale, pivot. We used to hang up staff birthdays. Now we hung up ambition. He stopped inviting me to lunch, said the team moved fast now. More of a standing meeting culture. I packed my turkey sandwich anyway, sat in the quiet corner by the warehouse window. The same bench I'd nursed him on during inventory days. Same one he painted for me on Mother's Day with crooked daisies. Now it was just a seat, one no one else used. I brought in cookies once. Same recipe his father loved. Oatmeal with orange zest. Set them on the conference table. No one touched them. By 3 p.m., they were gone. Thrown out. Empty Tupperware in the trash, still smelling like home. I didn't ask who did it. Didn't want to see the look on his face. It's easier when you don't look too close. When you let the little hurt slide past your ribs before they settle. One morning, I noticed my parking spot had a new sign. Reserved CFO. My name was gone. I parked across the lot, didn't say a word, just walked the extra steps, but that walk got longer each time. At the company anniversary gala, they made a timeline of milestones. I walked along the display, glass of watered-down wine in hand. Photos, dates, awards. Not one of me, not one of my husband. As if the company had materialized from air in the year my son took over. I found one photo, tiny, cropped. Just my hand visible on a clipboard. The caption said, "Early operations." That was me. Just my hand. No name. No note. I walked outside before the slideshow. The night was cold, felt cleaner than the air inside. I leaned against the brick wall. The same wall we leaned on when my husband told me we'd made it through our first profitable year. He kissed my forehead and said, "Let's never forget where we started." And now here I was, outside the celebration, uninvited from the story. I kept thinking maybe it was stress. Maybe he was overwhelmed, or trying to prove himself. So I excused the silence, the exclusions, the little cuts. I let them bleed quietly, because it felt better than admitting the truth. My son was no longer building with me. He was building over me. I brought him a small box one morning. Inside, his father's old fountain pen, gold nib, still worked, still held ink from the last contract he signed. I placed it on his desk gently. Later that day, I saw it in the recycling bin, next to a crumpled draft of his next press release. I took it home, washed the ink off the cap, put it back in its velvet case. Some things deserve dignity, even when no one's looking. That night, I sat in my garage, same one we started the business in. The walls still smelled faintly of motor oil and winter. I opened an old file box. Inside, invoices from year one, receipts handwritten in my husband's slanted print. I ran my fingers along the edges, rough, real, hours. The hurts came faster now, harder to ignore, but still I stayed, because I believed in the foundation, even as the house started to feel colder. He once told me, "You always take care of the hard parts, Mom." I didn't realize he meant I was disposable. Once the hard parts were done, I found the blanket on a rainy Thursday. I wasn't looking for it. I was looking for printer ink in the old supply closet, the one everyone forgot existed. Same one where I used to rock him to sleep on long work nights. It was folded in the corner, still soft, still blue. A pale patchwork flannel with hand-sewn letters stitched across the edge. "To my baby boy for your dreams." I sewed that when he was 6. Stayed up all night with a needle and stiff fingers. Added a star in each corner. He said it made him feel safe. It smelled faintly of storage and sawdust. I pressed it to my face, closed my eyes, and I remembered. His tiny hand gripping mine during storms. The way he ran through the office shouting, "This is mine too." How he cried when I missed his first school play, because a client wouldn't wait. "I saved you a cookie," he said that night. Like forgiveness was easy when you still wore Velcro shoes. I sat down on the cold floor, blanket still in my lap, printer ink forgotten. Have you ever remembered something small, just when everything felt like it was falling apart? It was like watching an old movie inside your chest, one you thought was lost, but the reel still plays. I cried for the first time in months. No noise, just water. Like the body was tired of holding it all. When I got up, I folded the blanket neatly, placed it back where I found it. Because it didn't belong out there anymore. Not in this new world. Not in this version of him. That afternoon, I passed by his office. Door half open. He was laughing with 2 of the board members. They were talking numbers, growth, exit strategies. One of them clapped him on the back. "You're not just a chip off the old block. You're the whole damn tree." He laughed, didn't correct him, didn't say, "It was my mother's block." I stood there for a moment, long enough for him to see me. He didn't, or he chose not to. Either way, it landed the same. Empty, forgotten, perfect. That night, I pulled out the memory box from under my bed. Old photos, a music box that played Edelweiss, 1 baby shoe, and a key. A small brass key tied with a red ribbon. The original lock to the first office drawer. He gave it to me on my 50th birthday. "Because everything important lives in here," he said, and tapped my chest. I untied the ribbon, held the key in my hand, turned it over, then over again. It was warm from my skin, but it felt cold in my palm. I placed it on the nightstand. Didn't put it back in the box. Didn't need to anymore. Something had changed. Not with him. With me. The next morning, I walked into the office early, the building still dark, no humming lights, no footsteps. I opened my desk drawer, took out the envelope with the pitch deck, set it on the desk beside me, then I opened the bottom drawer, took out the folder of original founding documents, scanned my name at the top. The ink hadn't faded, neither had I. In the silence, I whispered something I hadn't said in years. "I built this." The walls didn't reply. But they knew. They remembered. I placed the documents in a new folder, labeled it Archive Personal, locked it. Then I opened my email, typed a message to our longtime attorney. Subject: Revisions to ownership documents. Short, sharp, clear, no anger, just movement. I didn't send it, not yet. I saved it to drafts, because sometimes the real power isn't in the fight, it's in the preparation. I stood up, looked around the office, same walls, same floors, same dust on the windowsill, but I wasn't the same. I reached into my purse, pulled out the crayon logo, set it on the desk beside the pitch folder again. This time, I didn't cry. I just sat still, letting the 2 versions of the company breathe beside each other. One full of love, one full of edits. Then I picked up my pen, wrote 1 word on a sticky note. Enough. I stuck it to the inside of my desk drawer. Not for him, for me. Because breaking doesn't always mean loud crashes. Sometimes it's just the sound of paper on paper, one page closing, another one starting, and this time, I'd write it alone. I didn't slam the door, I just closed it. There are shifts that don't shake walls. They don't come with shouting or tears. They come with keys on desks, names off folders, passwords changed at 3 a.m. The power didn't rise in me like fire. It settled, like dust, finally landing after years of motion. That Monday, I arrived 2 hours early, before the first coffee brewed, before he stepped out of his Tesla, chewing ambition like gum. I walked into the server room. The hum of machines felt almost holy. Our entire company, stored in pulses of light and memory. I sat at the terminal, entered my credentials. I still had full access. He hadn't taken that from me yet. I transferred the original source code and founding documents to an encrypted external drive. Company minutes, financial trail, original trademarks, mine and my husband's. Then I walked to my office, unlocked the bottom drawer, took out the burn box. It was a tin cash box painted with sunflowers. We used to keep our first payments in there, wrapped in grocery receipts. Now it held other things. A paper copy of the original incorporation papers. A notarized power of attorney I'd never activated. One flash drive. And a photograph, me, my husband, and our boy, his cheeks still round with childhood. I placed the photo in my purse. Everything else went into a plain envelope. I sealed it, wrote no name on the front, because it wasn't a letter. It was a door, and I was walking through it. I logged into the bank portal, account ending in 48119, the one I opened in 2002 for petty cash. Over the years, it had grown its own bones, emergency reserves, quiet dividends, a habit of saving in the background while flashier accounts danced in the spotlight. I wired 60% to a new account under my trust name, left the rest, like a half-empty wine glass at a table you're done sitting at. He wouldn't notice, not yet. It wasn't theft, it was reclamation. I updated my address on all the shareholder records, removed my company email, forwarded all future inquiries to my private attorney. No warning, no explosion, just unhooking. I cleaned out my office slowly. Nothing dramatic, just one box. The daisy mug he made in 3rd grade. The letter opener from our first trade show. The stapler that jammed every Monday but still felt like mine. I left the plants. He never watered them. They were already dying. I paused at the bookshelf, ran my finger across a binder labeled 2004 Growth Phase. Inside, my notes in blue ink, margin scribbles, paper clips still holding receipts from trade fairs and lunch meetings in diners with sticky menus. He once told me, "You documented everything like it mattered." It did. I left the binder on his desk, opened to a page where his 10-year-old handwriting had doodled a tiny crown on my name. Queen of Receipts, it said. Let him decide what to feel. That wasn't mine to manage anymore. Then came the silent scene. The one I'd rehearsed in my head for months. No words, no confrontation, just movement. Exit. I walked past the break room, past the glass conference rooms filled with noise and jargon, past the photos on the wall that didn't include my face. He saw me as I reached the front door. I know he did. His hand lifted, like he might wave, might ask, might call. But he didn't, and I didn't stop. Outside, the wind picked up. The trees didn't care that I was leaving, and that felt right. I drove to the notary's office, finalized a document I drafted 6 months earlier, transfer of partial shares, to a charity in my late husband's name, educational grants, vocational training for single mothers, not revenge, just redirection. The future would still benefit from what we built, just not through him. I mailed the envelope, tracked it to the corporate lawyer's office. Then I went home, and I did something I hadn't done in 15 years. I sat in my sunroom, in the chair my husband built, and I read. No spreadsheets, no emails, just a paperback. The story was about a woman who lost everything. then found herself again. One quiet morning, drinking coffee from her own cup. Not his, not theirs, hers. I closed the book halfway through. Not because I was bored, but because I finally understood. Power isn't loud. It isn't fire and fury. It's the silence after. When the air clears, when you realize you didn't burn down the house, you just walked out of it and took your name off the lease. It came on a Thursday, the envelope, cream-colored, thick, no return address, just my name in perfect block letters, like a file label. I opened it on the kitchen counter, next to the bowl of oranges, like it was any other piece of mail. Inside, a letter, typed, 3 pages long, and a copy of a document, one I had never seen before. It was dated 4 months ago. Title: Memorandum of Operating Transfer, Internal Restructuring. At first, it didn't register. Just language, legal padding, soaked in neutral tones. But halfway down the second page, I found it. Effective reallocation of voting control and majority ownership to primary successor and acting CEO, Mr. Jordan Hayes. I read it twice, then again. Then I looked at the signature. My own. But it wasn't mine. I knew my signature. I knew its loops, its sharp edge on the H, the way it leaned ever so slightly right after the accident in my wrist. This one was a copy, a mimic, done with effort, but no memory. He had forged it. My son forged my name. He didn't just forget me, he erased me. I sat down, very still, very quiet. The window was open. The wind moved the curtains like breath. A betrayal like that doesn't scream. It whispers. You don't yell. You just stop breathing for a moment. Like your body knows something sacred has been broken. I reached for the second sheet. It detailed a board vote, unofficial, conveniently unrecorded, pushed through by proxy signatures. 3 of them I recognized. Old friends, ones I had mentored. They hadn't called, hadn't asked. Just moved on, moved over. The third page was a brief memo, Jordan's words. This restructuring reflects the company's modern needs. It is not a rejection of legacy, but a realignment of vision. Legacy. That's what I had become. A mural on the wall. A founding myth. A figurehead with no function. I reached across the table, pulled out the envelope's last item. A photograph. Of the new executive suite. A remodel I hadn't known about. My old office, now painted slate gray. The framed family photo replaced with abstract art. And on the desk, his hand, wearing my husband's watch. I gripped the table edge, not to steady my rage, to steady my grief. It wasn't just theft. It was a burial. He buried me. And didn't even bother to tell me where the grave was. I thought of the key I kept on the nightstand. The one with the red ribbon. I thought of the blanket I folded back into the closet. I thought of the crown he once doodled over my name. He hadn't just outgrown me. He had rewritten the story, without the woman who built it. I stood up, walked to my bedroom, pulled open the drawer. There it was again. That key, still warm from memory. But now, it meant something else. A symbol of everything I had handed over, in trust, in faith, in blindness. I drove to my lawyer's office, didn't call first, just showed up. He saw my face and didn't ask questions. We sat, and I handed him the document, the signature, the photo. He read it all in silence, then looked up. I can challenge this. I nodded, but my voice said something else. I'm not trying to get it back. He blinked, confused. But this is fraud. It's actionable. I leaned forward. I'm not going back to that building. I'm not taking him to court. I just want it. Documented, sealed, and in my name that it was never his to take. He understood, quietly, professionally. The next day, the affidavit was signed, filed, certified, a truth carved into paper, not to punish, but to preserve. I went home, poured a glass of red wine, sat on the porch. The crickets were out, the sky softening into lavender. And in that slow dusk, I remembered something else. The red crayon drawing. the one I had placed beside the pitch folder. I hadn't thrown it away. I had packed it in my purse that morning. The day I left the office, I found it at the bottom. Edges frayed, lines faded, but still there. A drawing of a house, me, him, and his father. Underneath, in wobbly letters, "This is ours, forever." I held it in my hands, then folded it gently, not because I believed it anymore, but because I had once loved someone who did, that someone no longer existed. But I did. I always had. And now, for the first time in years, I remembered that I didn't need their crown, or their titles, or their rooms, just the ground beneath me, and my name, unshaken. I took the crayon drawing, lit a match, watched it burn in a small ceramic bowl. No anger, just release. Because sometimes the deepest betrayal isn't that they leave you out, it's that they try to take your name with them. And sometimes the quietest victory is keeping it anyway. The day I chose peace, no one noticed. That was the beauty of it. No announcement, no grand gesture, just the quiet click of a decision falling into place. I started by giving things away, not out of loss, out of clarity. The blue glass vase Jordan bought me for my 50th, I donated it. Too sharp, too loud. It never held water long anyway. The leather briefcase with my initials, I left it at the library donation bin, still full of old notes. Let someone else carry something that once mattered. Then came the bigger choice. The summer house. The one John and I built on 3 acres when the company first turned a profit. Jordan never cared for it. Said it was too rural, too empty, too quiet. But I loved that house. I loved the way the windows caught the light at 6:15 p.m., the way the porch creaked like it remembered everyone who ever sat on it. I hadn't been there in years. So I drove, 3 hours north, no music, just the wind and my breath. The house looked tired, paint peeling, shutters hanging by rusted hinges, but it was still mine. I walked the perimeter, saw the tree we planted after Jordan's birth. Its trunk thicker now, branches wide like arms I used to carry him in. Then I made the call, to the local college, community-led, mostly women, mostly older, mostly overlooked. I offered the house, not to sell, to give, for a writing residency, for women who had stories but no time, no silence, no porch to sit and remember who they were before they were erased. The administrator cried. I didn't. It wasn't sadness, it was resolve. Let the house breathe again. Let someone else plant tomatoes in that soil. Let the porch carry new weight. I kept one thing from it. A tin wind chime from our first anniversary. It sounded like rain on glass when the wind passed through. I hung it outside my kitchen window. Now, even silence had music. That night, I went to the attic. Opened a box I had kept sealed for decades. Inside, the first prototype of our product. Clunky, hand-soldered, held together by willpower and duct tape. Next to it, a handwritten notebook of ideas. My ideas. Sketched while Jordan napped, on napkins, receipts, church bulletins. Proof that I was always the engine. He thought taking the company meant taking the meaning, but meaning doesn't live in ledgers, it lives in memory. And I still had all of mine. I opened the last page of the notebook. There it was. A sketch of a circular logo, one I'd never submitted, too sentimental at the time. 3 rings, one for me, one for John, one for our son, but at the center, a dot, alone, anchored. That dot was me. Back then, I thought it was the weakest part. Now I know it was the center, the root, the start. The next morning, I filed for a DBA, 3 Rings Design Studio. Not a tech firm, just me. Designing, advising, helping others build legacies without giving away their names. I set up a desk by the window. Same chair I'd sat in the day I walked away. This time, I didn't bring my old laptop. I bought a new one. Clean, light, untouched by files or ghosts. I uploaded the logo, simple, circular, centered. The wind chime tapped once. And just like that, the future opened. A soft sound, a deep breath. A beginning made of silence. People started finding me. A woman from Tulsa, burned out from her family's startup. A retired nurse wanting to create a small online service for caregiving resources. They didn't need empire, they needed space, a soft start. And I gave it. Not money, just clarity. The kind no one gave me when I was building in the dark. Jordan never called, not once, but I heard from someone else, Marcia, the receptionist I hired 20 years ago. Now married, with 2 kids in college. She found me through an old vendor account. Said she saw my name on a trademark transfer. Said she always wondered where I went. I knew it was you who built it, she said. Everyone did. He just talked louder. I didn't cry, but something in me melted, a recognition I didn't know I needed. Before we hung up, she said, "If you ever need anything, you let me know. Some of us never forgot." I sat there for a long time after that. Not sad, not angry, just full. The way Earth feels right after rain. I looked at the chime. The center ring moved slightly, like it heard her too. That night, I took the red ribbon from the old key and tied it to the wind chime. Let it dance in the breeze. It wasn't a symbol of what I lost anymore. It was what I chose to keep. Not the company, not the name, not even the child, just me. Whole, quiet, unapologetically intact. It started with a voicemail, then another, then 6 more in 3 days, all from Jordan. The first was clipped, formal, like a CEO trying to salvage a PR situation. "Hey, Mom, we should talk. There's been a misunderstanding. Call me." The second came at 2:13 a.m. His voice was lower, strained. "Look, I don't know what you've been told, but the restructuring wasn't personal. Things got messy, that's all. Just call me back, okay?" I didn't. I let the messages pile up like unopened mail. By the 4th one, I noticed the silence between his sentences, longer, heavier, the sound of a man losing grip. The 6th message shook something in me. "I didn't think you'd actually leave. I thought you'd understand, that you always knew what was best. You always did, right? Just call me." He said, "You always knew." That was the first time he'd ever said that. Not when I stayed up reworking investor decks until dawn. Not when I used my wedding ring as collateral to fund our first big shipment. Not when I stayed silent at board meetings just to make him feel like a man. But now that it was gone, now that I was gone, he remembered. The 7th message came 2 weeks later. It was shorter, hollow. I was wrong about all of it. Then, click. No goodbye, no explanation. Just the sound of a man who finally realized the crown wasn't his to wear. Then came the letter, typed, of course, but signed by hand this time. His real signature, not mine forged in ink. He wrote about how the company wasn't doing well, that morale was low, that his leadership lacked cohesion, that the board was fractured. He asked if I would come back. Not to lead, just to advise, just to guide, just to be near. He closed with, "I know I said stay out of my business, but it was never mine. Not really. It was yours, always yours." I read it twice, folded it, placed it beside my coffee cup. Then I went outside. The wind chime moved gently, the red ribbon lifting like it remembered something. I sat in the rocking chair, the same one I used to hold him in, the same one he never once looked back at when he left for college. I rocked slowly. No anger, no pride, just stillness. He thought admitting the truth would bring me back. But truth without humility is just strategy, and I wasn't a strategy anymore. The next week, a black SUV pulled up to my front gate, tinted windows, city plates. I didn't answer the door, but I watched through the lace curtain. He stood there, not in a suit, in jeans, a hoodie, holding a box. It was the old notebook, the one I thought was lost, the sketches, the napkin math, all of it. He had found it, or maybe he had kept it. He placed it on the welcome mat, took one step back, and stood. 5 minutes, 10, 15, waiting for a door I would not open. Because peace is not an invitation, it's a boundary, and some bridges don't burn. They dissolve, slowly, quietly, until both sides forget how to meet in the middle. Eventually he turned, got back in the car, drove away. I picked up the box, carried it to the kitchen table, opened it, and there, between the pages, tucked like a bookmark, was the drawing, the red crayon house, the three of us, still faded, still small, but different this time. He had traced the edges in ink, tried to preserve it, tried to give it weight, but some things can't be restored. I placed the drawing back in the box, closed it, walked it to the storage shed behind the garden, not thrown out, but not kept close either, just archived. Because forgiveness doesn't always come with a key. Sometimes it's just the door staying closed. A week later, Marcia called again. "Did he come?" she asked. I said yes, but that I didn't let him in. She was quiet. Then she said something I still think about. Sometimes the only way they learn is when they see the door they thought would always be open. Stay shut. I hung up, went outside, poured birdseed into the feeder. The sun hit the wind chime just right. It cast a flicker against the window, like a candle, like a breath. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, listened to the wind, played the voicemails one last time, then deleted them, all of them, one by one, each erasure a note of finality, no anger, no hate, just choice. Because power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the silence that says no, and means it. The funny thing about silence is, eventually, it stops feeling empty. It starts to feel full, warm, anchored. I didn't rebuild my life. I re-inhabited it, piece by piece, cup by cup. I began waking up before the sun, just to watch the light crawl across the floor. I planted lavender by the back fence. It caught the wind just enough to fill the house with calm. Not triumph, not revenge, just calm. Some mornings I'd sit in that rocking chair with my coffee and listen to the birds like they were old friends. There was no more rush, no more schedule, no more needing to prove I had built something, because I had. It just didn't live in offices or bank accounts anymore. It lived in my bones. One afternoon in early spring, I visited the summer house, the one I gave away. It wasn't mine anymore, but they invited me to see what it had become. A circle of women were sitting on the porch, all ages, all quiet in a way that felt earned. One of them stood up and handed me a cup of tea. She said, "You gave us more than a house. You gave us a sentence we didn't know we had the right to finish." I didn't respond. I just nodded. Then I walked around back. The garden I once dreamed of planting had bloomed. Tomatoes, wildflowers, even a lone sunflower reaching toward the sun. I touched its stem. It bowed gently. That night, I sat by the river with a small item in my pocket, the key, the first one, to the first door, the one John and I turned together, the one Jordan once asked to copy when he was 8. He never returned it. But I had another. I held it in my hand for a long time. It wasn't heavy, just no longer necessary. And then, without ceremony, I let it go, dropped it into the current, watched it disappear beneath the surface like it was never there. No splash, no ripple, just gone. That was the moment I knew I wasn't closing a chapter. I was releasing the whole book, because peace isn't something you wait for someone to give. It's what you claim when they've taken everything else. A few days later, I changed my last name back, not out of spite, out of return. It was my mother's name, the one she carried through grief and grit. I had buried it for too long under someone else's ambitions. Now I wore it like armor. I ordered new checks, a new sign for my mailbox, new business cards with just one line, designed by C.A. Morgan Simple. Unapologetic. Mine. Jordan never wrote again, and I never asked why. Some endings deserve silence, not to punish, to preserve.